Mrs. Daisy came in with our reading teacher, Mr. Mackey. They were holding hands and making goo goo eyes at each other. Ugh, disgusting. Mr. Mack said he would meet her in the teacher's lounge at lunchtime. Here they are walking into class together. Can you see that? Mrs. Daisy and Mr. Mackey hadn't been married very long. That's why they were so mushy with each other. Once they'd been married for a few years, they'll stop doing all that mushy stuff. My parents have been married for like a century, and they hardly ever do the mushy stuff. Are you sick, Mrs. Daisy? Asked Emily. Mr. Klutz told us you went to the doctor. Oh, it was only a checkup, she replies. Let's get to work. It's time for our word of the day, and today's word is unique. What does that mean? Asked Michael. I have no idea, said Mrs. Daisy, who doesn't know anything. Does anybody know what unique means? Andrea stuck her head up in the air. Of course. Little Miss I Know Everything keeps a dictionary on her desk so she can look up words and show everybody how smart she is. But Mrs. Daisy called on me instead. Unique means furniture that's really old. My mom has a unique table. Everybody laughed at me, even though I really didn't say anything funny. That's antique, dumbhead, said Andrea. Unique means something that is one of a kind. Oh, snap, said Ryan. I knew that, I lied. But a really old piece of furniture that's one of a kind is unique. It's a unique antique. Ha ha, boo hoo on Andrea, in her face. No wonder I'm in the gifted and talented program. After we finished our word of the day, it was time for writing. I hate writing. Nobody here hates writing, do they?
No.
The school year was almost over, Mrs. Daisy said, and she passed out pieces of paper. Let's write about our favorite memories from second grade. Oh, they were in second grade. Mrs. Daisy told us to close our eyes and remember one of the nice things that had happened since September. Ooh, remember the time Mrs. Roper dressed up like Johnny Appleseed? Asked Andrea. Yeah, we all said. Mrs. Roper is loopy. Remember the time we went on the field trip and Mr. Doker ate a bug? Asked Ryan. Yeah, said Mrs. Docker, was off his rocker. Remember the time we drove the substitute teacher, Mrs. Todd, crazy and she ran screaming into the parking lot? Asked Michael. Here's the picture from the next page. Yeah, said Mrs. Todd is odd. But I couldn't decide if I should write about the time Mr. Klutz was hanging from the flagpole or the time Neil, the nude kid's ferret, pooped on Emily's head. Remember the time we had food fight in the vomitorium? Neil asked. Yeah, that was great. I have to admit, even though I hate school, we had some fun in second grade. Those were the good old days, I said. Remember the time we had a sleepover in the Natural History Museum and the giant hissing cockroach crawled into Emily's sleeping bag? That happened last week, Arlo, Andrea said. So did your face, I told her. Mrs. Daisy said she had to go to the ladies' room and we should start writing while she was gone. As soon as she left, I crumpled up a piece of paper and threw it to Andrea. Yo, immature, Arlo. Maybe you'll get held back. Huh? I asked. What do you mean held back? Didn't you know? Andrea said. They take bad kids and make them repeat a grade when it's all over. And you're a bad kid, so you might get held back. What? Could they really do that? If I had known they make kids repeat a grade, I wouldn't have done so much bad stuff. Chapter 4. Everybody loves bonbons. The next morning, we had to go to the all purpose room for an assembly. Mr. Clux got up on stage with Officer Spence, our school security guard. Officer Spence was wearing his fireman costume. Today, we're going to learn about fire safety, Mr. Clutz said. Officer Spence is a trained firefighter. Fire is very dangerous, kid, said Officer Spence. Does anybody know how you should start? What you should do if your clothes catch on fire? I raised my hands and Officer Spence pointed to me. If your clothes catch on fire, I said, you should buy new ones. Everybody laughed, even though what I said really wasn't funny. Before you buy new ones, said Officer Spence, you should stop, drop, and roll. Watch this. Officer Spence did the most amazing thing in the history of the world. He poured some fluff stuff on his fireman costume, took out a lighter in his pocket, and set himself on fire. See the picture? That's crazy. Stop, drop, and roll, shouted Mr. Cluck. Stop, drop, and roll. We started chanting. Officer Spence threw himself on the ground, covered his nose, and rolled all over the stage until the fire was out. Officer Spence makes no sense. He told us we shouldn't go home and set ourselves on fire. We had all learned all kinds of stuff about preventing fires, too, like you shouldn't ever set your brother or sister on fire. When we got back to class, Ryan's mom was waiting for us. Ryan hid under his desk. Andrea's mom was waiting for us, too. Andrea sat up straighter than usual, if that's possible, and folded her hands so her mother would know how perfect she was. The two PTA moms told Mrs. Daisy that the class had a surprise for her. We all went to our cubbies to get our presents, and we lined them up on Mrs. Daisy's desk. I got you a box of bonbons, I told Mrs. Daisy. Hey, I got her a box of bonbons too, said Michael. So did I, said Emily. Me too, said Neil, the nude kid. It turned out that just about everybody in class got Mrs. Daisy bonbons. That's a lot of bonbons. Thank you so much, said Mrs. Daisy. You know how much I love bonbons. Everybody loves bonbons. Bonbons are little pieces of chocolate, girls. Why don't you open a box right now? Michael suggested. Oh, I really shouldn't. I'm trying to eat healthier. Maybe just one. Andrea's mom passed out bonbons to everyone. While we ate them, Mrs. Dora went to the front of the class. Part of my job as PTA president is to plan your graduation, she said. You're going to wear caps and gowns, and there'll be a guest speaker and a big cake, and you'll get diplomas. And is all that really necessary? Asked Andrea's mom. With all due respect, the children are just moving up to third grade. Just moving up to third grade, Mrs. Doyle said. It's an important milestone in our children's lives. Our babies are growing up so fast. Soon they'll be off to middle school, and before we know it, they'll be in high school. And then they're going off to college, and I won't see my boy anymore. And Mrs. Doyle started sobbing. Ryan looked like he was going to die. I thought his mom might tell more stories about Ryan peeing. But at least she blew her nose in a tissue and blubbered something about how much we grew since we were in kindergarten. Here's that picture. Andrea's mom just rolled her eyes. I don't think she likes Ryan's mom very much, but she can't do anything about it because Ryan's mom is PTA president. She's only the vice president. Finally, after 1,100,000 hours, the PTA moms left. Is my mother gone? Asked Ryan. Yeah, I told him. You can come back out now. Chapter 5. Getting ready for the big day. It was the last week of school, so we hardly had learned anything, which was fine with me because learning stuff is boring. But it was hard to concentrate. I kept thinking about how in a few days we would be off for summer. Mrs. Daisy wasn't concentrating either. She had a new hobby, knitting. She pretty much sat around in the back of the room knitting while excuse me. Let me start that sentence again. She pretty much sat in the back of the room knitting while Ryan's mom helped us get ready for graduation. See her knitting? Sometimes Andrea's mom came too, but she spent most of the time rolling her eyes. Boy, she sure rolls her eyes a lot. Eye rolling must run in Andrea's family. We did all kinds of stuff to get ready for graduation. Did you know when you graduate, you have to wear this weird cap on your head that's shaped like a square? Nobody knows why. Mrs. Doyle asked our art teacher, Mrs. Hannah, to help us make caps out of construction paper and cardboard. Mrs. Hannah also helped us make graduation banners and signs to decorate the hallway. On Thursday, Mrs. Doyle had us march from the gym to the playground behind the school so we could learn how to make a grand entrance for our parents. She made us practice over and over again until we got it right. Did you ever hear of graduation song? It's the song they play at graduation. Mrs. Doyle asked our music teacher, Mr. Loring, to play the song on the accordion while we marched around the playground. He told us the real name of the song is called Pop and Circumstance, but nobody knows why. The song doesn't have any words. It just goes like this. Dum dum da dum 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 da dum 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 da dum 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 dum. It's a dumb song if you ask me. Songs are supposed to have words. So I made up words to the graduation song. They go like this. I'm graduating. There's a square on my head. Why is there a square on my head? Because I'm graduating. You repeat it over and over again while we're marching around the playground. I taught the words to everybody. Soon the whole class was singing, and it was cool. Then Mrs. Doyle told us to knock it off. Practicing for graduation all morning was boring. I couldn't wait for lunch. Finally, after a million hundred hours, Mrs. Doyle said it was time to go to the vomitorium to eat. Here's our picture from the cafeteria, or as they call it, the vomitorium. I sat at the table with guys. Michael tried to juggle his tater tots. Neil, the nude kid, put cookies into his eyes. Ryan let us pour salt on his tongue. And Andrea and her annoying friends sat at the next table talking about girl stuff, like color dresses. What color dresses their dolls would wear. What are you guys doing over the summer? Asked Ryan. I'm going to sleepaway camp, said Neil. I'm going to football camp, said Michael. I'm going to cooking camp, said Ryan. My family is going to rent a house at the beach, I said. I didn't ask Andrea what she was doing over the summer. She probably was going to learn her multiplication tables so she would be smarter than everybody in third grade. Andrea was sitting all quiet. I figured she was still mad because her mom lost the PTA election. Are you still mad because your mom lost the PTA election? I asked. No, said Andrea. I'm worried about Mrs. Daisy. What about her? Asked Emily, all concerned. Haven't you noticed? Andrea said. She's put on a lot of weight. She's getting fat. It must be all those bonbons we gave her, said Neil, the new kid. She's probably eating a box every night. That's not good for her, said Emily. It's all your fault, said Arlo. Andrea said. You're the one that thought of giving her bonbons. Why is everything always my fault? I didn't force Mrs. Daisy to eat many bonbons. What was Andrea's problem? I wish a truck full of bonbons would fall on her head. And we are going to stop right there and we will pick up chapter 6, The Greatest Day of My Life, on Wednesday. Do you girls have any idea what might be wrong with Mrs. Daisy? Any clue what might be wrong? What do you think? What might be happening that would make her sit and knit all the time and that she might be putting on some weight? Any clues?
Um,
Any predictions? She just got married. She's knitting and the kids say she's getting fat. Hmm.
maybe she's
What do you think? Well, think about that. See what your predictions might be when we get back together on Wednesday, okay?
okay. She might
I
be
think,
pregnant.
oh, maybe Jocelyn. That's a good one. Say it louder so that Alyssa can hear you.
She might be pregnant.
She might be going to have a baby. What do you think, Alyssa?
Um, I think so too. Maybe she
Uh,
will have a baby.
Well, we shall see next week. We'll be done with this book by the end of this week and we'll pick another one. But tune back in on Wednesday to find out. Let's see if we can figure out what happens and maybe their graduation fiasco will occur.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, girls.